So playing after pre-draw in Badugi is a little tricky because of the nature of the game. Position is going to always dominate, and if you're multi-way or heads up, it's going to be very important to change your strategy according to whether you're multi-way or heads up. You should always have a plan when you're playing after the pre-draw. So if you played the hand knowing that it is going to be a raise for value, then you should continue to bet if you still think you have value. If you start with a hand like ace deuce 3, 3 Badugi, then that's going to have a lot of value post-draw, and you're going to be able to continue to bet in most cases. If your plan was to isolate someone who you thought was limping weak, then you can follow that plan. But always be willing to change your plan, and just be sure that you have an idea of what you're going to be doing in the hand. So if your plan is to switch up your play later in the hand, then that's the overall plan. So for example, if you start with a hand like ace deuce 7 and you 3-bet for value, but then are worried that your villain has possibly improved to better than a 3-card 7, then you can think about switching to snowing and padding in position, and then go ahead and snow the villain instead of trying to value bet. So obviously everything's going to change with more relevant information that you pick up in the hand. What kind of players are you up against obviously is very important, just like any other game. Playing against an aggressive player in Badugi is going to be a little bit tricky, but essentially if you just play tight out of position, you're not going to have to worry too much about this. If you're playing loose players with position, then all the better. The more you can do, and as we'll get to it soon, the more you can snow or 3-bet as a semi-bluff, etc. Can you break your hand at any point? Kind of was what I was telling you before about if your hand has a potential of breaking, then you have to follow a plan that if you get 4-bet after the first draw or something like that, or if you get raised or 3-bet and you feel like the best move is going to break your hand, then go ahead and break your hand. Often a lot of people might get very stubborn and try and 4-bet to make them break their hand, but it's often not going to be very effective unless you have a very solid read that the player is trying to make a move on you. So if you had the plan of breaking, say like an ace deuce jack queen kind of hand, if you got raised out of position, then go ahead and do it. It's going to be the more effective thing to do, and you're never going to make a really big mistake by doing that. You will make some really big mistakes by not breaking a worse queen or a worse king or something like that, and drawing to essentially zero equity the whole way. So playing out of position, like I said before, tight is going to be right. It's very hard to get out of line, out of position in Badugi, just because of the nature of how strong the positional advantage is. The disadvantages to playing out of position pre-draw are it's going to be a lot harder to value bet any kind of thin hands, because you're not going to know, you're not going to have as much information if you're in position as if you're in position. Then you can assess whether or not you think their check or their bet is correlated with a certain amount of strength. So playing out of position, you are kind of tied to polarizing your range and betting almost if you don't have a clue of whether or not they've improved and whether or not they're going to pay off a bet. Betting for value or playing on snowing out of position, snowing is a viable option. It's a little risky, but it's if someone can freeze behind you, then it's going to be very tough to do. And freezing behind essentially is just when someone calls a bet in position and plans to pat behind, even if the player is pat, so that they don't end up breaking their hand. So it's essentially kind of like a fail-safe cautionary play, where if you think someone has a weak Badugi, but you don't want them to break it to give them a possible chance of improving their hand, then you can call behind in position and then pat. This is actually something that you can do and balance very well and adapts to your whole game of Badugi. And I encourage you guys to think about situations that that are going to require that kind of play. And it also is going to require you to analyze things a little bit more in depth and pay attention to really what people are patting out of position.